Hey, Clint. Have you ever been to Baltimore?
Well, Brigid, as you know, everywhere is Baltimore. But of course, I have been to Baltimore Prime. Just that once, I went to Camden Yards and the Babe Ruth Museum and Edgar Allan Poe's grave, which are just like right down within a few blocks of each other in the harbor. It was pretty cool.
That does sound cool. R.I.P. Edgar Allan Poe. You would have loved rowboating through Baltimore to mysterious ruin.
Absolutely.
Push the button.
And welcome to the Mercy of Pods, the world's first and only podcast about the Captives' War series by James S.A. Corey. Except today, we are not going to be covering the Captives' War. Not at all. It'll be our first non-Captives' War episode.
Dun, dun, dun.
Today, we dive into the Churn, one of the novellas in the Expanse universe. Have you guys heard of the Expanse universe? It's good. You should check it out. This is something that we're looking forward to doing to, sort of cover some of the Expanse and maybe some other things during the next, hopefully, 4 to 5 months before the next book comes out. And this is our first shot at it. We're starting with the Churn.
Why not? I'm super excited to get into the Expansiverse, and I'm thrilled that we're starting with the backstory of my baby girl and yours, Amos Burton, most lovable sociopath in sci-fi. This novella fills in his backstory, but it's also really good by itself. Like, I really think you could read this if you hadn't read any of The Expanse and be pretty into it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really good story and a great place for us to start as well with this, in part because I think this is both one of our favorites.
Yeah. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Right away, we're introduced to Burton, a skinny black dude who wears nice suits and is careful with his grooming. Like a businessman, except he's the head of a criminal empire. He controls a region at the drowned edge of Baltimore. His organization includes many people he thinks of as having disposable lives. The narrator states that they look up at him as they would look at the moon, like a force of nature too powerful to resist.
Did you want to cue the readers in as to who your fan cast was for the original Amos Burton?
Yes, I really think Giancarlo Esposito would be perfect. That's exactly who I pictured.
Absolutely. In fact, I would be somewhat surprised if they weren't writing it with him in mind.
Right? Totally. Most people in this setting are on government support called basic. A lucky few have paid employment. Unregistered births, such as Burton, have to find their way in the cracks, and as such, it's remarkable that he's risen to such power. He thinks of himself as owning the people he employs, who are sex workers, drug dealers, and trafficked children, and believes that those he owns see him as an improbable success story, mythical as the seagull that flew to the moon, in quotes. This guy really admires the moon.
Is there a mythical seagull that flew to the moon, or is that something else? Or is that like an imaginary mythical thing that happens in the future?
I didn't even think to look it up.
I mean, neither did I. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. Maybe that's what that story Jonathan Livingston Seagull is about.
Hey!
Which all our hippie parents had at one point.
Yep.
Burton is, it turns out, mid-conversation with one of his lieutenants, Oystra. Oystra has informed him that a new hire, Timmy, has fucked up. He was supposed to collect money from a junkie, but he shot him instead. Erich, another minion who had vouched for Timmy, insists that it must have been for a good reason. Erich has one good arm and one small, useless arm. He's an expert at forged identities.
I am so excited to cover Erich. Erich is one of my favorite characters.
We love Erich.
We love Erich. So there's this line here where Burton thinks that Erich's malformed arm was as a result of a fight that Erich had when he was 6 or something. That's what Burton is thinking, and he notes that it's not something that Erich specifically told him, and he didn't care to ask. So this jumps out at me because, as we'll find out in the next episode when we cover Oberon, that's not what happened to Erich at all. And so it makes me think that Erich just sort of tells everyone that it was a fight to make him sound tough or something, rather than how his arm originally came to that state.
It's kind of, if you think about it, a pretty flimsy story, because what could a 6-year-old do to another 6-year-old that would fuck up his arm to the point of it?
Right?
That's interesting. Erich is very afraid of Burton, as he should be. The hand on Erich's shrunken arm makes a fist, as it often does when he's scared or angry. The three men go into the storage room at the diner where they're talking, where Timmy is waiting. Timmy is described as tall and strong, with a heavy brow and reddish-brown hair, which is receding even though Timmy is barely 15 years old. Burton asks him if he killed Austin, the junkie, and Timmy confirms, his amiable demeanor not changing at all. Timmy is so still and so unafraid that Burton gets the sense that he's a moron. But what Timmy says isn't dumb at all. He explains that he could tell Austin would never pay and would serve better as an example for all the other people who owe Burton money. That's so funny to me because sometimes even reading this, I'll slip into like, Timmy is so stupid because he just doesn't say any, like his outward appearance is so stupid seeming, but he's not dumb at all.
Nope.
While waiting for Burton to decide what to do with Timmy, Erich is increasingly afraid that he'll be killed. They're friends and Timmy is a protector, so that doesn't sound good. There's a little interlude where Burton is sitting in the crammed diner after Erich leaves, and he's enjoying that others are hungrily waiting while he takes up a table not eating. And he is in his own way kind of a sadist, the kind that relishes power over other people.
Yeah, I think that this is here to make clear that Burton is like not a cool crime boss like Tony Soprano or somebody like that who we like. He is a piece of shit crime boss, and so we are not supposed to like him, despite the fact that they have cast Giancarlo Esposito to be that crime boss. So, yeah.
Even though Gus is cool, Burton's not cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Later, I want to talk more about how Burton displays sociopathy that's like encouraged in our society, and Timmy displays sociopathy that is considered freakish.
That's a good point.
But we'll get into it later. Out of Timmy's earshot, Burton tells Erich that Timmy is now Erich's bodyguard, charged with protecting Erich when he's meeting with clients. They are therefore responsible for each other's screw-ups. Erich goes to explain this to Timmy, and Oyster says he doesn't know why Burton is bothering with that freak. Burton says, well, the arm is weird, but he's really good at forging documents. And Oyster says, not the cripple, the other one. Seriously, there's something wrong with that kid. Burton says Timmy has potential. Oyster and Burton go on to debrief about the other elements of his empire. We learn that Burton owns brothels with kids as young as 5. This is but one small part of his organization, a single detail among many in the bigger picture. Burton is a big picture guy. Like Baltimore itself, he weathered storms. LOL.
It is very funny. I realize that this is the other Amos Burton, but it is very funny going back to the beginning of The Expanse and all the times that they foreshadow the Amos ending. There are so many little clips about how Burton weathers storms or he'll be the last man standing and he's immovable and whatnot. And this is just another one of them. I love it.
Yeah. It's also funny because Burton Prime, by the end of this story, has not weathered the storm.
Yeah, exactly.
And Baltimore itself gets fucked up pretty bad later in The Expanse. So I guess he is like Baltimore itself. After we leave Burton and Oystra, we get a tour of Baltimore, which has turned into a real shithole. Many people live cramped, desperate, grinding lives, which sounds awful, but not that different from the urban poverty of contemporary Earth.
It is not. And this is the only time in the entire Expanse narrative that we spend a lot of like real time on Earth among regular folks prior to the rocks falling. Amos does get a couple of chapters in Nemesis Games, but that's all prelude to the big boom of it all. And here, Earth society is depicted as immovable and impenetrable and calcified and stratified. As you mentioned, extreme poverty, but it's also not necessarily like dystopian. It's just sort of more like a futuristic sprawl in the vein of Blade Runner or Neuromancer, but also because of the way that they describe the rising seas and sort of stable government, it feels very real rather than like cyberpunk like those two properties do.
Totally. It's so hard to believe, like, as an American, that Basic would ever be real.
Yeah, I know.
The narrator narrows in on one particular Baltimorean, Lydia, to whom time has not been kind. She works for one of Burton's lieutenants, Leave, whose lover she had been before being his employee. She also used to be a sex worker, and before that, something else. Lydia does not love the gray hairs and wrinkles she's accumulated, but she feels lucky to have lived long enough to accumulate them. Lydia is warming up a bowl of frozen hummus, which I'm so glad there's still hummus in the future.
Sure.
When Timmy arrives. He arrives alone, as always, because he and Lydia are only ever alone together. Timmy explains what happened with the job he was supposed to do. Lydia has known Timmy since he was born because she and Timmy's mother worked in the same brothel and looked out for each other. Lydia comforted him when he was turned out for the first time, and she helped him with his mother's funeral. She's never been able to protect him, but she tries to help him make his way in the world. In return, he gives her something she can't explain but needs desperately. While undressing, Timmy tells Lydia he got sick on his way back from his job, and it turns out that's the first time he's killed someone. After he takes his pants off, she sees that there was, quote, no desire in his expression and only a mild distress. She tells him he's not sick, he's traumatized from the killing, and he's relieved it's not a virus. Lydia and Timmy have sex, and she thinks Sex was meaningless, and so it could mean anything. What does this sex mean to Lydia? She can't explain. They aren't lovers. It's not incest. It's something else that they can only have with each other, and it's more than most people have. Now, I caught a lot of heat for saying this on Reddit, but this is fucked up. There is really no justification for this that's acceptable, in my opinion. Does it mean Lydia is irredeemable or rotten to the core? No, because people are complicated, but it's really not okay to have a sexual relationship with a child. It wasn't okay for the ancient Greeks, and it's not okay for Lydia.
Yeah, definitely agree. It is not good or okay for, a couple of different reasons. Not just because Timmy is 15, and this has clearly been going on for a while, so no idea when this started. But also because she's a mother figure for him. She was there when he was born. So I think we're supposed to be shocked about this. And the first time I read it, I certainly was.
Too.
But you're right. It doesn't make Lydia irredeemable, even if she herself doesn't really give a shit about redemption. And as you say, she's pretty comfortable with the notion that what she is doing is bad. And it's because of who she is and who she's been her entire life. She doesn't really care that much about good and bad. There's this quote where she says, she felt no shame about it. The other people would only see the perversion of a woman, and the boy she'd helped raise, pleasuring one another, meant that other people would never understand what it meant to be them, to survive the world they survived. They were not lovers. They would never be. They were not surrogate mother and incestuous son. She was Lydia. He was Timmy. And in the bent and broken world, what they did fit. It was more than what most people had. And look, as you say, it's fucked up, but given the way she describes it and her life, I get her perspective on it, even if I don't agree with it.
Yes, I agree. I get her perspective on it for sure. And of course, she and Timmy have both had much worse things done to them by much more predatory people. And Lydia later she kind of explains that to her being attractive and being safe are the same thing. They're connected. And Timmy makes her feel safe. So it's definitely more complicated than just like straight up predatory power imbalance stuff. But it's also not, I don't think it's meant to be something that we're like valorizing or romanticizing. I think it's fucked up and it's supposed to be fucked up. Moving on. In her post-nut clarity, Lydia realizes that Burton letting Timmy live even after he fucked up means the churn is coming. The churn is what Liev calls the chaos that periodically swallows the city, rearranging things and people in massive ways. It's cyclical like weather patterns. Lydia has lived through it before and can see that Burton is stocking up on big violent men like Timmy in preparation. While she's thinking this, Timmy is lying perfectly still, breathing evenly like he's asleep even though he isn't. His expression is blank, and she thinks he's not beautiful. And yet the thought of losing him, which she knows is inevitable, hurts terribly. She keeps coming back to the thought even though it hurts on the pretext of preparing.
Do we not want to tell the listeners what you texted me about your observations about what Timmy is packing?
Lydia says that she feels pleasantly sore, and I feel that this is canon proof that Timmy is hung like Willem Dafoe.
There you go.
Which we were all wondering. 4 days after Timmy's big fuck up, paramilitary security contractors with Star Helix descend on Baltimore. The churn has begun.
I love that we get Star Helix again.
I do.
There are no laws on Ceres or Baltimore, just cops. Yeah. It's great. Little callback. And we also get some organizations from the Belt and a connection between the sort of Earth-based mafia and the OPA. The Loco Griga is here, and not just on Ceres, stealing cheese from local kitchens. So I appreciate that.
I like that so much. Timmy and Erich are waiting for their client who is late. They can both sense that something is off in the air. Erich tells Timmy he's always wanted to go to space where you can be anyone as long as you're good at what you do. Not just a new identity, but the freedom of space and the chance to access medical technology that could regrow his arm. Out there, Erich could be the man he was meant to be if that childhood accident hadn't messed up his arm.
I love this passage, and it's so important for Erich's personal journey, and we're going to be spending a lot more time with him. But this passage is also so familiar in so many ways, where he says that the same technology that would fix him in outer space could be found fewer than 8 miles from the filthy curb where he sat, but with the triple barriers of being unregistered, basic medical care waiting list, and his own ability to function despite his disabilities, space was closer. And he talks about how the thought of going into space was like the promise of sex to a teenager, rich and powerful and frightening, and how 1,000 times he's thought to make the effort to build himself an escape identity, and 1,000 times he postponed it. So this passage does double duty of, sort of laying groundwork about the current state of medtech and the distribution of resources on Earth. We've got like this oh my God, death panels kind of suggestion that medical care is being rationed. But it tells us a lot about who young Erich is. He's got dreams that are not just idle fantasies, but are about improving his life and himself. Totally. And it's clear that he has a lot of understandable body shame while still acknowledging that he can get by just fine without changing himself. So rereading this, knowing what he feels like when he's older about his arm is a little heartbreaking. You're just fine, Erich, buddy, even though you can't play piano quite yet.
We love Erich.
Yeah.
His longing for space is interrupted when Timmy ascertains that security forces are raiding all the buildings on the block. These two dummies left Erich's deck with his own DNA and all the data about identities he's forged inside the building where they're going to do the deal, and now they're separated from it. Little side note, deck is what computers are called a neuromancer, too.
Yep.
I don't know if it's probably common. Security is going to get it for sure, and all they can do is run so that they too aren't captured. Timmy herds Erich away from the block out of the reach of the rent-a-cops. Timmy keeps Erich moving, and Erich verbally vomits about how dead he is when Burton finds out the cops have his DNA. Erich is the only link between Burton and the identity mill, and although Burton's info wasn't on the deck, it would only be a matter of Erich being picked up for something else and his DNA being connected to the laptop. Erich knows this is how Burton will see it and that Erich will be eliminated.
He's right. I do want to point out that the description of Erich's anxiety disorder is spot on. As someone with the same problem, he just keeps bringing up the thing that he can't control and freaking out about it.
Yeah. So true. Really relatable.
Yep.
Burton, for his part, is observing the churn from a series of safe houses, which he moves between randomly, hoping to evade capture. The cops don't know about him yet, and he wants to keep it that way, which would be a lot easier if Leave hadn't been caught. Burton's lieutenant and Lydia's former paramour is arrested in the street by a gang of Star Helix personnel. Many see it happen, and thus his whole network of subordinates is put on alert. Maybe Leave will keep quiet and be sentenced to scary hot prison, or more likely he will cut a deal and get to serve his time in a more comfortable place by selling out various unimportant criminal partners. Everyone knows he won't flip on Burton, though.
The exchange when Leave gets caught between him and the cop is great. Leave sort of reminds the cop of whatever the current version of Miranda rights goes. And once the kid completes the admonition, Leave says, "Good, better. Now go fuck yourself." Classic crime story. I also love the idea that even though they live in a security state, there are still constitutional rights that cops theoretically have to respect. This comes up in Nemesis games as well. I would kill to read the Constitution of the UN and the Mars Republic at this time. It's my kind of nerdery.
That would be fun for you.
Yep.
While this is happening, Erich is waiting at a coffee place with a rentable deck. He's scanning the news incessantly for any info about Burton or his organization. The coffee tastes coppery, as fear always does in the Expansiverse.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Lydia is sitting at the window in her apartment. As though she's preparing for an old-timey train journey, she's put on makeup and done her hair. She has her go bag beside her and her running shoes on. And this is where she's thinking about how attractiveness and like a man being attracted to her has kept her safe in the past. She's waiting to see if the police get to her She's waiting to see if the police get to her before Timmy does. The darkness or else the light. And I'm certain no one else who has ever met Timmy has thought of him as an avatar of the light. The door opens and it is Timmy. Without speaking, they leave together. Lydia knows she'll never be back to the apartment where she's lived for almost 10 years. She's leaving behind all her most precious objects, including the cup Timmy made for her at age 8.
So the cup, I'd have to go back and check, but in the show, Amos finds this cup when he goes to Lydia's house after her death, which is a nice little Easter egg. I don't know if that appears in the books, though.
I think that's show only, because I don't know how she would have gotten it back from here. But it's such a nice touch. Lydia compares herself to a snake shedding its skin. Timmy replies, "Okay." He leads her to a little motorboat on the scuzzy, rotten part of the waterfront. It's so funny. The control, like, he never says anything that he's thinking. He just says, like, okay. I don't know. He's great.
Yeah.
They take his little motorboat to a small island in Chesapeake Bay where he has a bolt hole in an abandoned house that isn't much more than ruins. But he has a bit of a setup, and Lydia realizes he stays here when he's not with her. "Nobody bugs you here," he explains. Or, not twice. He has brought her here before attending to Erich because, you. Lydia tells him he fucked up again, and he needs to go get Erich and protect him. That's the job Burton gave him, and anyway, Erich is his friend. Timmy's a little petulant about this, as any teenager being given a talking to would be. Lydia says you have to be a man now, a man who's important to Burton. Lydia hates that she's sending him away, sending him to become less the boy that she loves so much. She also does not want a third party infringing on her special Timmy time, but accepts the sacrifice.
Yeah, my read of this is not that she cares about the potential of not being with Timmy sexually again. As she said earlier, they're not lovers. This is her more quasi-maternal instinct, but she also thinks of Timmy as sort of like an extension of herself and is like the lone part of her life that she derives real comfort out of. And so that's why sending him away is very difficult, I think.
I do think that she loves him also. Like...
Sure.
Sure. Okay.
Well, no. I mean, what do we mean by love in that context? But yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't think Timmy loves her. Like, I don't think he really feels love, but I think she loves him.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, that makes sense.
What is love? Erich is still holed up at the coffee shop, the rooftop coffee shop, hogging the rental deck and panicking about the churn. And this is kind of a funny scene because nobody else at the coffee shop gives a fuck whatsoever. They don't know what's going on. Like, he's, like, vibrating and sweating at the deck, and everyone else in the coffee shop is just, like, having a cappuccino. Timmy finally shows back up after midnight with his usual amiable smile and tells Erich he has a place for him to hide while they find out what Burton knows and is going to do. Erich says he's ready to go, but he needs a deck. Timmy is like, there's one right here. Erich is like, it's bolted down. And that's when Timmy's expression went empty and he stood up. Now, what I love about this third-person omniscient style is that now we get to see Timmy through the eyes of the woman running the coffee shop. She watches as a large man, or boy really, gives her a credit chip with a massive balance and then smashes apart the wooden table to which the deck is bolted with his bare fists. She's like, okay, and doesn't react other than to get a broom for the wood shards. Erich and Timmy leave the coffee place with their new deck. Erich is blown away by the badassery, but Timmy doesn't think it was that impressive. Tables don't fight back, he says. They reach the island, and in Erich's eyes, Lydia is a random old woman in a perfect mask of makeup, crouching next to a chemical stove. A truly surreal image. Timmy takes him to his section of the ruin, where his deck will be able to get internet. He points out Lydia's room and tells Erich he can't go in unless invited, and to basically leave Lydia alone. Erich is like, Jesus, obviously. Who is this lady, though, your mom? And Timmy doesn't answer. This exchange, I think, shows how irrationally protective Timmy is of Lydia. Erich isn't a violent person, and he only has one arm, and he's also Timmy's oldest friend, but Timmy still can't trust Erich to respect Lydia's boundaries because he doesn't trust anyone with her, and also it doesn't occur to Timmy that a rule exists unless someone tells him explicitly.
Those are great points. Love that.
Thank you. Timmy says he's going to get food and to check in with Burton. Erich was sort of hoping Timmy wouldn't talk to Burton, but he is their boss after all. And then I have to read this sentence verbatim. I actually don't, but I'm going to anyway. Okay. Timmy stood, stretched, considered the skin knuckles of his hand with what could have been a distant ruefulness, and then turned to go back to the old woman and the light. Lydia and Timmy are the light to each other, like each other's North Star. Erich stops him. Hey, we're friends, right? He says. Timmy agrees that they've always looked out for each other when they can. Erich asks him not to tell Burton where Erich is. For several days, it's a moot point because Timmy cannot find Burton, who's still bouncing from safe house to safe house. Currently, he's in a loft with a woman named Edie, where he is thinking about how he's much too smart and controlled to bother fighting back against the cops. He thinks about how idioms like even the score and blood for blood misrepresent the situation and cause poor decision-making. Burton is a little proud and a little annoyed by how long it took Timmy to find him, but he's here now at least, at Oystra's safe house. Timmy has already been searched for weapons, so Burton feels safe being in the same room with him. Timmy, whose face never changes from the amiable smile and blank empty eyes. Burton compares Timmy to a bird singing away while a cat readies itself to pounce as Timmy explains the situation with Erich. Timmy doesn't seem to realize he sentenced his friend to death. Timmy, to his credit, does not tell Burton where Erich is or that he's with Lydia. Burton can't figure out why Timmy is so interesting. He's basically identical to dozens of other young brutes in Burton's employ, yet there's something different about him. Maybe it was the deadness in his eyes.
Ding! Foreshadowing.
Burton gives Timmy a gun. It has a sticky enzyme on it that destroys DNA and fingerprints, a perfect burner weapon. Timmy loads it, turns the safety on and off, demonstrates that he's familiar enough with guns to get the job done. His blank smile doesn't change as Burton confirms that the job is to get rid of Erich. He's so calm, Burton thinks maybe he planned all this, but Timmy didn't. He's just seeing it work itself out. Burton requests an organ Erich can't live without as proof, like his heart, brain, or windpipe. And Timmy heads off on his mission. Oyster wonders if he'll really do it, and Burton says if he does, it means Timmy will do anything for him. Meanwhile, Lydia and Erich have made a sort of routine on the island. She makes tea, he uses a solar charger for his deck, and they wait for Timmy. Timmy brings food and fresh clothes, and when he's not there, she wonders if he's ever coming back or if the last time she'll see him has already passed. She knows Erich can't figure out what the deal is with her and Timmy. Erich must find this all as strange as if lobsters started speaking Spanish. And yet if they did, what could anyone do but answer them? And so she and Erich find their rhythm. When Timmy comes back this time, Lydia immediately notices that he's only brought 2 dinners, not 3. She asks him about it, but instead of answering, he asks if Erich is in his room. She confirms, and he walked back toward the black doorway, as casually as though he's simply calling Erich for dinner. Again, going away from Lydia is going away from the light. Lydia stops him. She asks him to sit and eat with her before he does his task, which she knows from pattern recognition is to kill Erich.
So the 2 dinners, not 3 dinners thing sticks out to me every time because, look, if I were going to kill someone, not that I have done this, I absolutely have not. But if I were going to do this, I might, sort of buy an extra dinner just in case that person saw me coming so that I wouldn't give away what I came here to do. But, Timmy doesn't give a shit about that, or he probably doesn't even think about it because even though he has the money for it, we know he has money. He thinks, why would he buy a dinner for a guy who's just going to be dead anyway? And who cares if he sees me coming? He can't stop me. And it's just sort of like a sort of badass thing, to just not buy him dinner on the way to kill him. I don't know.
It's really mean, too. It's like not even a last meal. Yeah, that's quite a detail. Lydia has been sitting in a position she thought of as geisha-like, and now she lays out their takeout dinner with the grace and precision of a tea ceremony. Lydia lightly questions the need to kill Erich, and Timmy explains that he works for Burton. Burton gave him a job. He has to do the job. Like Lydia said before, he wants to be important to Burton. And Lydia says, there is more to you than what anybody sees. And Timmy says, except you. But Lydia thinks even she does not know his depths entirely. I think she might be the only person who even realizes Timmy has depths. They eat in silence for a few beats, and Lydia reflects that spicy food is nice because the pain is on the outside.
As an incredibly white person, this has generally not been my experience.
Outside the mind, at least, if not outside the body.
Mm.
And then she delivers the lesson that will change Timmy forever. And who will you be to yourself, she asks. Doesn't what you think matter more than what he does, meaning Burton? Timmy still doesn't understand. She puts his hand under his shirt on his chest, and her love and attraction to him surges. Who will you be in there, she asks. Timmy goes unnervingly still, and his eyes go as flat as a shark's. You know there ain't no one in there, he says amiably, breaking the fuck out of my heart. So he was able to do that still thing before the repair drones got to him.
Yeah, it was like the repair drones knew he was one of their own, in a way. It was like,
yes.
Like, you're already weird. We're going to dial it up to 11.
Yeah. She asks who he will put in his heart if he doesn't have one of his own. Burton? Timmy figures, yeah, that's the guy with the power. But Lydia says he doesn't have the power to actually make you do anything. He can't make you be the one to kill Erich. She says, quote, people like us, we aren't righteous, but we can pretend to be if we want. And that's almost the same as if it were true.
This is just such an incredible way to explain why Amos, like the Amos that we're going to meet later, why he is who he is and why he attaches himself to Naomi and later Holden and Prax and Peaches and Bobby, because they are the person he puts into his heart, because he doesn't believe he has one of his own. They are who he chooses to be his conscience because he doesn't trust his own. And I love that we get this formative conversation to figure out why he does what he does.
Yeah, like how did he learn that strategy? Because he's kind of has Lydia in his heart, but he... up till this exact moment, they're equally as bad people of each other. And then she tells him he could be someone else. We'll discuss this much more later. Timmy still doesn't get what she's saying, so she says, pretend I am a good person. What would a good person be telling you to do right now? While he thinks about this, she remembers with aching fondness all the versions of Timmy from baby to toddler to child to now. At last, Timmy says, so you're saying I shouldn't do it. But she doesn't want to command him not to do it. She wants him to choose the righteous course of action because it is righteous, not because someone told him to act righteous. Erich wakes up and joins them, and Timmy must decide. Burton wants you dead, Timmy says. Rough luck, buddy. Erich felt his world fall out from underneath him and thinks anyone looking at the three of them would just see 3 faces in a circle of light surrounded by darkness. Then Timmy says he knows it's true because he got the contract, and Erich freezes, completely unable to predict what Timmy will do next. And then finally, Timmy says he wants to help Erich get out to safety. And maybe he just decided in that second himself.
Maybe.
Erich says, correctly, that Burton will find him anywhere he goes, and he can't doctor a new identity because the cops have his DNA. He resigns himself to his fate, telling Timmy if he has to die, it might as well be at his friend's hand. Timmy simply responds, nope. Erich says, as long as I'm alive, Burton isn't safe. Timmy says, that's funny, works the other way too. Without explaining what he means, he gets back up to go to the city. Lydia asks against her better instincts if he'll be back, and she doesn't want to ask because she's sure he won't be back. And for an instant, she regrets convincing him not to kill Erich. Part of her would rather have Timmy forever, even if it means he has to kill his best friend and be a bad person. Timmy replies, you never know, and walks away into the dark. Lydia feels, among all the other pain and fear, pride. She feels that all the pain she's endured in the past has been preparing her for this unbearable moment. She picks up Timmy's fork, wanting to touch anything he had touched. And then she asks Erich for a favor.
So look, this isn't to say that this is Lydia's redemption, because as we mentioned earlier, she doesn't care about that and she's not looking for it. But this is also an incredibly unselfish act. If she hadn't have spoken up to save this boy, who she barely knows, she would get to stay with Timmy as long as the two of them lived. And she would get to go on being the person Timmy puts in his heart. But she doesn't. In part because it's the right thing to do, but more because she doesn't want Timmy to be that kind of person who would shoot a friend in the back, which is like sort of a weirdly maternal instinct, kind of, you know?
Yeah, I think her feelings towards Timmy are very maternal in a weird way. It's so awkward to say this because of the fact that they have sex, but a lot of things about how Lydia talks about Timmy, I relate to loving someone that's not really yours, or that you watched grow up but maybe didn't help that much with or couldn't protect or whatever. And just that when you're seeing that person as a teenager and as an adult, you just think of them still as a baby and want to protect them. So yeah, I do think it's a little bit of a maternal or a caretaking instinct of hers, and that she just, I mean, what does love mean, obviously? But also I think the fact that she wants him to learn to be a better person or to act like a better person, even if he isn't actually one, and that she's letting him go so that he can learn that. I think that means she loves him more than she loves what he gives her.
It's a great point.
Back in Baltimore, no one notices Timmy as he passes through the crowd. He gets on an automatic bus and rides it to Oyster's safe house. He's searched by the lieutenant's guards, who take the pistol Burton had given him and let him up. Timmy ascends to the loft and asks Oyster to speak to Burton. While waiting, he takes in all of the furniture and other objects in the room. Burton, addressing Timmy as Tiny, asks for the news. They have a very funny conversation where Timmy says he ran into a hiccup and he's still waiting to see if he can handle it. The hiccup, of course, is Burton. Timmy begins to perform violence, and he's so natural and good at it that it's both breathtaking and stomach-churning. He flips Oyster's lookout chair, dumping Oyster and his shotgun on the floor, then rips his ear off. He gouges Oyster's eye out and shoots him with his own shotgun.
There is a visceral description of Oyster's eyeball popping out before Timmy blows his head off here that is so fucking hard to read.
It's super grody. Burton, having run to the back room, comes back guns blazing. Timmy knocks his legs out from under him, using the shotgun like a cricket bat. Neither man can quite gain an advantage, and the shotgun is too long for such a close quarters fight. And I guess Burton's out of bullets. They grapple until Burton has Timmy in a half Nelson chokehold. Burton gives in to his rage and tells Timmy he's going to hunt Erich down after he kills Timmy. He's going to kill everyone Timmy ever loved. Joke's on him. Timmy doesn't love anyone. Burton tells Timmy that he owned Timmy's mom too, and no one he owns has what it takes to bring him down. Timmy goes limp, allowing his shoulder to dislocate so he can slip out of the hold.
I'm not an MMA guy or a fight guy, so I don't know this for sure, but I believe this indicates that Timmy has had his shoulder dislocated before, probably multiple times. At least that's what I learned from like Lethal Weapon back in the day. For him to even know that this was possible, like he had to have had this done before. That's my understanding.
Yeah, I'm sure he's dislocated his shoulder before, which is yucky. Timmy punches Burton over and over so hard it makes the light go strange and the world go gray. Burton tries to cover his face, but Timmy can bust apart a wooden table with his fists, and a man's head and throat are much more delicate than wood.
The narration jumps into Burton's mind here, and there's like sort of a chilling description of death, like feeling the blows until they become more distant, and he begins to slip away towards sleep. Really difficult to read.
Yes, quite. Timmy, now certain that Burton and Oyster are both dead, which the narrator explains, he says, Timmy was sure he was alone in the apartment, which I found very chilling. Looks out the window to see that the street-level guards have left their posts, meaning that they're heading up the stairs to the loft. Timmy has been there for 2 minutes. He stands by the front door and waits, and when the guards attempt to enter, he shoots at them until they shut the door again. The first time I read this sequence, I experienced it as competence porn. I was like, oh my god, that's Jason Bourne. He's just doing everything right. Timmy doesn't let his dislocated shoulder get in the way of setting Oyster's apartment on fire and fleeing to Lydia's old place. The door is locked, but he breaks in. The apartment still smells like Lydia, whom he will never see again. Timmy wraps his shoulder in ice from her freezer and waits a bit for the swelling to go down, then pops his shoulder back in place, no big deal. Then he gives himself a wipe down with hand towels and changes into some of the clothes he'd kept at her apartment. When first responders come to put out the fire at Oyster's loft, they don't know who Burton is because he was unregistered. Fingerprints and DNA have been destroyed by the fire, but it seems obvious enough that these two criminals were killed by rival criminals, open and shut. From a bird's eye view, from the long view, the paroxysm of violence that has engulfed Baltimore's crime syndicates is a blip. Soon there is a new normal, nature returning to its routines after a big storm. Timmy is stopped by a security team that notices his swollen, bloody right hand. He explains that he boxes. They ask for his ID, but he doesn't have it on him. He can refuse bio-identification, but then they'll take him into the station and it will be a whole kerfuffle.
So this is another data point as to the state of criminal procedural rights. I know everybody is waiting with bated breath about this, but we learned that that cops can essentially do what is a stop and frisk. They probably don't have probable cause for an arrest at this point, but they probably do have reasonable suspicion to engage in what we now call a Terry stop. Again, not going to get into it, but if you want to Google those things, you can. But we also learned that you have the right to refuse ID. However, your refusal can be grounds for arrest and detention, which means that you theoretically don't have the right against self-incrimination. So that's, fun stuff for me.
I am actually super curious, and we'll never know what the Constitution looks like these days because it is the UN, not good old US of A. So
that's right.
Also, you'll notice that unlike Daffod, Timmy knows he doesn't have to talk to the cops.
Yeah, fucking Daffod.
Know your rights, people, even in the future. Timmy acquiesces and the security person scans his fingerprints. Tension between the security team and their quarry rises as the scanner searches for Timmy's records. Like, the team is kind of noticing, like, oh, this guy's actually looks like a real thug. Finally, the team lead, whose perspective this scene is focalized through, tells the big man that they have a travel flag on Amos Burton and that he's cutting it pretty close. He's meant to be on the noon train to Bogota for his Luna apprenticeship. The team even offers to take him to the station. Timmy, now Amos Burton, realizes Erich has crafted him a new identity, the son of a bitch. He assures the security team that he'll make his train just fine. The team moves on, and Timmy gets a coffee and a muffin, savoring his last few moments in Baltimore and his first as a registered person with a future. He's going to space, where he will be a single needle in an unfathomably vast haystack. In an echo of the opening paragraphs, we learn that Amos Burton is a tall, pasty, stocky man with an amiable smile. He's leaving Baltimore, the only place where anyone knows him, and when he goes, the city will go on as though he was never there at all. Roll credits.
Let's go. Finn. Nice work.
It's so hard to describe that, like that the little reveal where you find out his new identity, like I couldn't do it justice. You just have to read it.
Yeah, it's a great little trick there. And one thing that I want to sort of like, and we're going to talk about the decision that Amos makes, I think a little bit, is let's pretend that he doesn't make that decision, right? He doesn't make the decision to, that he kills Erich.
Yeah.
So A, he probably never leaves Baltimore. And B, if he does, he almost certainly doesn't meet Naomi, and he's not there for Naomi when she saves the universe once every fiscal quarter in like the later time. So like the universe is, probably fucked. But also like if he doesn't save Erich there, and let's assume everything else happens sort of normal, when he's on the ground on Earth, Erich doesn't save him, right? He doesn't get out of the churn that happens after the rocks hit because Erich owes him a favor. And so, it's one of those like butterfly effect things. And that's the point of this story, is to set up those dominoes into falling. But I appreciate thinking about the counterfactual and what it really took and what his choice wrought.
Yeah, I like thinking about that stuff too. And Lydia's choice to suggest that he not kill Erich, I think she could have made another choice there. And if he'd followed that, yeah, it's everything you just said. But if it starts even from like Lydia choosing, which is shocking because she's been a bad person for even longer than he has. Like she's been choosing immorality even longer than Amos has because she's way older. She's like, at least. So part of why I can't let their sexual relationship go is that she was a full on adult. Like if she's, let's say she's 45 now, that means she was like 30 when he was born. That's well old enough. Anyway, it's not like she's like 22, you know?
Right. Yeah, totally.
And like still dealing with her. Like she should have dealt with her trauma enough that she's not molesting children now.
Probably. So we'll come back to the sex part in a sec, but like, what do you think that what is the purpose of this story from a themes perspective and from a character perspective? Like what we know what it does for like the plot of the Expanse, but like, what is the purpose in terms of themes and symbols?
That's a great question. Amos is like kind of the main character of the Expanse.
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, he's like the through line of everything, and every day he chooses not to kill people. And I think that a big part of like many of the speeches in the Expanse are like, you do the right thing, not because it feels good or because you get to see the outcome, but because you know it was the right thing to do. And I think that's exactly what Lydia experiences in this story, where she doesn't get to know that Amos becomes the last man standing or anything about him, or that he, as far as she knows, maybe he got killed by the cops, you know, like she never gets to find out if her lesson had any impact. So she just has to do the right thing without getting to know. And Amos also is always having to choose, like every day he's having to choose, like, what would Naomi do here? Probably not kill this guy. And I think choosing morality, even when there's a lot of pressure, or choosing morality, I feel like has such a Judeo-Christian like overtone to it, but I guess more like ethics or choosing to do less harm or like not perpetuate evil is something that you can choose even if it isn't your instinct or doesn't come naturally to you. And when Lydia says, who will you be to yourself? That's, for me, like my version of the line that you're going to talk about next time. That's your favorite, where it's like, I find that very personally instructive, because even if you get like, a lot of times our actions are based on consequences. And what she's saying is, even though you know you won't experience consequences for this, you know it's the wrong thing to do and you'll have to live with that. So that's kind of something I find very personally important, is like, getting away with it isn't the point. You can never get away with it in your own mind, and you have to be someone that you can live with. And I feel like that's what I learned from The Expanse on my summer vacation. What do you think the story does for the themes and symbols of The Expanse?
I mean, I think all of that is very well said. I think that it sets up something that we talked about in the last episode about the sort of cycle of human experience, and it lays it out in black and white. The theme that gets repeated over and over again throughout the rest of the story, that there are peaks and valleys, and times when humanity is working together and times when humanity is working at cross purposes. And when you're in those times where humanity is working at cross purposes, that is when both the most terrible and beautiful things happen to people and for people. And so this is just an example of that. And this is their way. Obviously, you know, it's a way of setting Amos's backstory, and then also Erich's, and we meet Erich in a moment. But, you know, from a very sort of, what is it, Watsonian, or is it Doyleist perspective, where it's like it helps the story along. Which one is which? I forget which.
I don't know.
The idea is like it gives Amos a reason to go back to Earth.
Right. Yeah.
So I love the story for a number of different reasons, but I think what it is just sort of an encapsulation of the sort of thesis of The Expanse that I'll try not to repeat more than once or so an episode, which is that I think it's that humanity is the cause of and solution to all of our problems. And that's what this is here.
Yeah.
So what do you think this story does for Amos's character specifically? You're the Amos stan. What do you think?
This story, of course, sets up his backstory and kind of at least leads the reader to understand a little bit more about like, because when we meet Amos in the main Expanse books, I think the whole time you're just like, why is this guy like this? What is up with him? And this explains some of why he's like that and what is up with him. But like so it's third person omniscient, and it dips into every perspective in the story except Amos. Like we never actually get his internality. So we learn a lot about how other people see Amos or how they saw him when he was a kid, but nothing about what he's thinking. And he himself says there's no one in there. So it's like, do you not have an internal monologue? If you do, what is it saying? We don't ever get to know. Even when it's his perspective, like his point of view in the main Expanse, still not a lot of like thoughts or feelings.
He's not an introspective person.
Right.
Which, is one of the reasons why he's a great foil for Erich, who we'll talk about in a second, is that Erich is he's so anxious and so self-conscious, and Amos is the least self-conscious person on earth because he just, doesn't care, or he just doesn't think about those sorts of things.
Like Amos's presentation of himself is to blend in so that he can get away with things, right? Like he is aware that people see him as large and are scared of him. So he is very like, he's always smiling. Like the amiable smile is a big neurodivergent tell to me, because we all have, anyone who's born with resting bitch face has an amiable smile that they wear in public so people don't bother them.
Sure.
And I think that's about the extent of his awareness or caring about what other people think, is as long as they don't really get in his way. Whereas, like you said, Erich is like really thinking a lot about what other people think.
For sure. So I and you touched on this at the beginning, and I agree with you. I think there's a really good discussion to be had about whether or not Amos is a sociopath. And this story is sort of establishing the reasons why it might be that he is a sociopath. So I know that I've seen some discussion, and I've had discussions with friends who are saying, no, he's not a sociopath because he does care. There's no like official definition of sociopathy. It's not in the DSM to my knowledge, but the general idea is that sociopaths is like an umbrella term. It means they have a general lack of empathy and a difficulty understanding morality. And I think that explanation fits Amos. And that said, there are a lot of other things that are associated with sociopathy that don't fit Amos, like manipulative behavior or narcissism. That's not him. But I do think J.S.A. set out to depict Amos as sort of a friendly sociopath. He's absolutely amoral, and he certainly does lack empathy to a large degree, but like many other sociopaths, he's able to create bonds with a small subset of people that he considers his tribe. And so, at least from J.S.A.'s perspective and from the story reader's perspective, like we are supposed to think of him as a sociopath. I have a thing where I had a whole thing on Twitter where after I finished reading Sins of Our Fathers when it just came out, where I'd sort of put together this theory that I mentioned earlier about the point of the Expanse and why Amos is the last man standing at the end of the Expanse and how his sociopathy fits into it. And I'll save like sort of how the Amos's part, the theory, for later. But what I will say is that J.S.A. QT'd my little Twitter thread and said, quote, well reasoned, end quote. So basically confirming that, as usual, I was right about everything. And I can't prove this because, like most sane people, I nuked my Twitter account last year. But my point is that in that thread, I called Amos a sociopath, and J.S.A. agreed. So he is a sociopath, folks. So we gotta be comfortable with that.
I think the reason he's a sociopath, story-wise, is that, and this comes back to Burton also being a sociopath, that when someone is violent and strange and doesn't manipulate people, that form of sociopathy is like quite reviled. But when you're a sociopath like Burton or like the United Healthcare CEO or various members of our government, where your sociopathy is in getting power over people but not directly killing them, it's encouraged. It's like I think that's why they point out that he's like a businessman. Like the only difference between him and a businessman is the way he was born. And businessmen are constantly doing evil, psychotic, sociopathic shit, and it's encouraged. Whereas Amos's style of sociopathy, in which he's actually demonstrating a lot more care for people than many more socially acceptable sociopaths, but people are like, there's something wrong with him. I don't like him. He's weird. He's scary.
Yep. Totally agree.
So I think the reason that these two people are being contrasted with each other is that it's showing that being a good person is a choice that you can choose anytime, no matter how your background is. And even if you don't feel empathy, you can teach yourself intellectual empathy, even if you don't feel emotional empathy. Like you can teach yourself like, oh, that probably hurts that person. I don't want to hurt them. I'm not going to do it. As opposed to like emotional empathy where you would just feel that like without having to rationalize through it. I know one person that we know thinks he might be more like on the spectrum, but I don't feel that so much. That is something that you're like, Amos has said that when he was 5, he stopped feeling fear and has never felt fear since. And fear is crucial to feeling empathy. So I think he has, to get all DSM-y about it, autism is something you're born with, and sociopathy, you can be born with it or it can be caused by trauma. So I think he has some kind of personality disorder caused by trauma, not necessarily. But you can have both things.
Sure.
We really could talk for hours about all my things that I think about Amos, but let's move on to Erich. What does the story do for Erich's character?
Yeah. So we're going to talk lots more about Erich in the next episode. As I mentioned, he's one of my favorite characters in the series, easily top 5, and in part because we see his transition from an extraordinarily competent young man who suffers from body shame and intense anxiety disorder. And then later we get to check in on him in his sort of middle-aged years and then in his old age years. And we see how he's changed, and we see that through line. And I think it's really lovely. We don't get that with, I don't think, any other character really in a real way. So
that's so true.
Yeah. And I have a lot of personal relation to Erich. I feel very akin to him in a lot of ways. So, and as I mentioned, I think he's a great foil for Amos because he's so uncomfortable in his own skin, and Amos is, maybe too comfortable at this point. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I love when Erich, like, they're in these crazy, very adult situations, and then sometimes Erich will just, Timmy too, but when Erich is like, that was so badass, and Timmy is like, oh, it's not that big a deal. And then when Timmy's getting kind of bratty about the talking to he's getting from Lydia, it's like, these guys are 15.
Totally.
Our next discussion point is, what can the story tell us about the captives war? Neither of us put anything. I think maybe it doesn't relate.
I don't think it does.
Except what you already said about humans being the cause of and solution to.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a very, human story about a human story about humanity. This is analysis, folks.
Podcasting 101.
Yeah. So I don't see a whole lot of parallels. We will check in on this for each thing that we do. I think we'll check in on this. I don't see a whole lot of parallels between this and the Expanse, this and the Captives War. So let's move on.
Yes.
You mentioned this really nice comparison of a couple of characters or 4 characters, really. And if you want to explain what that is, I would appreciate it.
Okay. I think that Lydia and Timmy are like kind of a reflection of Naomi and Philip, in that she also doesn't get to find out what happens to him. She just doesn't see him ever again one day. And she just has to hope that she was able to push him onto the right path at a pretty crucial moment in his life, too. Like, should he continue with Marco in being a genocidal terrorist or find his own path? And then Lydia also, Timmy just disappears from her life, and she just has to hope. And losing him is like losing part of herself, and she just sends it off into the universe. I definitely think Lydia is like a mother figure, like a twisted mother figure, and she just has to send her son off into the universe, even though she says they're not mother and son.
Yeah, it's also interesting because later Naomi also plays the maternal role for Amos, and in many ways Amos is Naomi's replacement for Philip. Yeah. While Naomi is Amos's replacement for Lydia.
I love that point.
So yeah, I love the sort of narrative foils there. That's really interesting.
Yeah. I wish we knew more about how Naomi feels about Amos. Like, I don't know. There's just like a force field around Amos where we just don't get to go in there. Damn it.
She talks about him, I guess. Yeah. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, we might have to cover the Expanse at some point to figure out whether she thinks about him, but she does. But she doesn't spend a lot of time dwelling on him because I think she thinks of him as sort of a constant, a force of nature, as sort of, like just sort of rock.
Yeah.
And doesn't have to worry about him. And there are a lot of reasons for that.
Yeah, that's true.
So we have talked a bit about the sexual relationship between Lydia and Amos. I think that a question can be asked, and we should ask the question of why they decided to do that. And I think that, should I just read this quote, or do you want? Yeah,
why don't you read it? It's such a great passage.
Okay, so this passage is, I think, my favorite part of this story, because I think it is a great passage, and it's a way to think about sex in a way that is not normal. And it's not a sort of the way that most people think about sex. And it's the quote where she's talking about sex right before her as she is having sex with Amos. And it says, quote, "Sex held few mysteries for Lydia. She had fucked and been fucked by more men than she could count, and learned things from each of them. Ugly things sometimes beautiful. She understood on a deep animal level that sex was like music or language. It could express anything. Love, yes, or anger, or bitterness, or despair. It could be a way to grieve or a way to take revenge. It could be a weapon or a nightmare or a solace. Sex was meaningless, and so it could mean anything."
It could mean anything, and then she just doesn't tell us what it means in this case, which is frustrating. Yep. But it's a beautiful passage. But it's just leads me back again to why make the writing choice to make this caretaker relationship all pervy? Is it to explain why Amos is like that? Is it to make Lydia clearly a bad person, the way that we see that Burton isn't a cool drug dealer? Is it like her guiding him to do a writer thing is like a real choice that she has to make, instead of just being like, you feel like if Naomi was telling him not to kill someone, it'd be like, well, of course, because Naomi thinks killing people is wrong. But Lydia doesn't think anything is wrong. So her telling him not to kill someone is from it's like a choice. She has to intellectually decide that, She's not repulsed by killing.
Yeah, I think it absolutely does. But I think it also serves to lay the foundation of Amos's relationship to sex. And he thinks of it like Lydia does, because he grew up how Lydia did. And look, the Expanse is not a very sexual universe, but to the extent that it is, that sexuality almost always involves Amos, which is interesting because in the books, he's not supposed to be that pretty, but he's just one of those people that folks meet and everybody knows they fuck. And Amos does, and with lots of other people. There's that one throwaway line, I think it's in both the book and the show, but I know it's in the show, where Amos says of Naomi that she's like a sister to him, but he'd do her if she wanted him to. And I think that's like really important characterization, because it sets him apart from how most folks who are more sort of traditional or romantic about sex and love act. He means that he thinks of her like a sister, and he would do her if she wants him to, unreservedly, in both senses. And it's completely fine to him that Naomi doesn't want him to. Doesn't change how he feels about her at all. And that's sort of like an unusual type of relationship to describe in literature.
Super.
It's one that's incredibly familiar to me, but you rarely see it depicted. And like in lesser hands or in other hands, you probably see Amos like pining for Naomi or being jealous of Holden or whatever. But Amos is set apart because he's just a different cat. He's a singular character who is not someone who cares about possessing people or being possessed. He has his people. He will defend them. If sex is involved, great. If sex is involved, that's okay too. And he will still kill and die to protect his people one way or the other.
Yeah, totally. He doesn't feel entitled to sex. He sees it as... Later in the books, he's like, sometimes I feel a certain way and sex seems to fix it. But it's not even about his masculinity. I don't even know if he thinks of himself as masculine. It's not about, like, here in our culture, there's a lot of stuff tied up in straight men's sexuality, and a lot of it is very poisonous. And I think it's so very refreshing to see a straight man or straight-ish man depicted who likes sex, likes going to prostitutes, likes the physical stuff, isn't interested in a relationship, but also isn't enacting all of that weird, like, ego stuff or, like, virgin whore complex stuff. Like, he has weird complexes about sex, but none of them are what we would normally encounter if we were, like, hanging out on Earth. You know, like what you would encounter dating men. It's nothing like that. So I think that's why I and a lot of other women are drawn to, or, you know, male attracted people are drawn to Amos, is because it's like, what would it be like to be around someone like that who wants to have sex with you but isn't really objectifying you or demanding it? It's just bizarro. It's very cool.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you want to talk about light and dark? That is a theme and a symbol that came up.
Yeah, I mean, we hit it already a couple times. When I realized that these two super fucked up people had become like light to each other, that's pretty interesting. Do you have Memories Legion?
Yeah.
Do you read the author's notes?
Yeah.
I love the one for this because they're like, this was really hard because it's set on Earth and it's very dark. And we did it third person omniscient, but we didn't go into Timmy's head. And then they said that Wes Chatham, like, you know, the decision to make it sexual was kind of like they just felt like that's what it had to be. And then Wes Chatham talked to a psychologist about what that would do to someone's psyche, but they don't say what he learned. Like, they're just like, it doesn't, it's like great and also frustrating at the same time because it's like they're not really telling you anything more than what's in the story about these characters, but they're like, yep, this was hard to write.
Yeah, I noted that as well. Do we want to talk about at all about the names of the names and the meanings of the names? You had texted me earlier about Oystra and Amos.
Yeah, I don't know. I still go back and forth with these authors how much the names mean. Probably some of them mean them a lot and some don't. Amos, the name means carried by God. And then the book of Amos is a prophecy about how Israel will not be exempt from God's judgment. Israel and Judea will not be exempt from God's judgment. And if you sin against like the poor and women and children, then you're going to be punished by God just like everyone else. And it's very like, the themes are like justice and praising God for being the hand of judgment. Instead of like a lot of praise of God is like, thank you for giving us all this stuff. But this is like, thank you for punishing us when we do bad, which I find interesting. And then Timothy in the Bible, I couldn't really get a handle on what that could possibly mean. Couldn't figure it out. It's just a letter from one guy to another. It's a letter from Paul to some guy named Timothy. Useless.
All right.
Cool story.
Yeah. Well, so this is our first non-Captives War episode. I think it was good. I think it was fun.
I had a good time.
We'll do some more of those.
This was hard to get my arms around, I have to say. It was a lot more to it than, even though it's like set on Earth, there was a lot more to kind of get across in the summary than there was for Live Suit. But maybe that's because I only did do half of Live Suit. I don't know. Anyway, come back for when we do Oberon next time, motherfuckers.
Yeah, I can't wait. So follow us on Buzzsprout or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also send us an email at themercyofpods@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram or the socials at Mercy of Pods. Brigid, did we fix the YouTube? What's going on with YouTube?
Yes. YouTube has sound you can listen to now, but it doesn't have anything interesting on the picture. But I'm given to understand people don't care about that. It's just a static image, and you can hear us talking if you like to do that on the YouTubes. There are 3 episodes up, working on more.
Fabulous. Our logo is by Matt House. The music is Push the Button by Sid Luscious in the Pants. Available wherever you get your music. And the question that I'm going to ask as we go to the outro music, Brigid, is I want you to think as to who your fan cast is for old Erich.
I already know, but I'll tell you next week.
I know too. All right. Sounds good.
Push the button.